Hi pals, it's me Artie, they them pronouns only. This is a video I'd meant to do in November, but a lot went on, a lot has been going on constantly, so I kind of forgot, to be honest, but I feel like now is as good a time as any to do it. But if you want to know what's been going on, this video is a good example of what the fuck I've just been dealing with constantly since like late September and it's still going. But November of 2022, I had a pretty gnarly mental health dip, and I ended up going to stay at this place called Maytree in Islington. So the Maytree, I think they call themselves a sanctuary for the suicidal. So that's just to kind of like explain why I went there. Maytree is a charity run, I guess. I don't know. It's not NHS funded. It is funded privately with fundraising, etc. And it is a place where you can go and stay once for 5 days. It's not the most accessible house, I won't lie. It was a bit of a nightmare for me. Like, the main things were that there are no bedrooms on the ground floor. I'm not sure if you could even get through the front door if you were a wheelchair user. The staircases were quite narrow. It's a pretty old house, old buildings there, and they didn't have a bathroom on every floor, or at least like a toilet, but you did have like a little shower wet room in your room, or I think they were in every room. So yeah, unfortunately for me, I used the bathroom quite a lot, either because of Crohn's or because I drink a lot of water. So I did find myself almost rationing water in some ways, because you also couldn't drink the tap water in the bathrooms or in the sink in your room. So I think that's a suggestion I left them before I went, was that maybe like letting people know that you can take a jug up to your room or something, that you have jugs, because as an autistic person, again, like for me, I need to know what's available to know what I can ask, because yeah, I definitely didn't drink enough water while I was there. This is when I did a video on I slept like shit for a week, and this is what I learned, because I could not fucking sleep there to save my life. I was in so much pain all week that I really struggled to sleep. This was also really high pain time, early in my re-pain flare, early starting to come off of steroids as well, like re-tapering after my last Takayasu's flare up, and yeah, just a lot was going on. I think I was just not doing great. I'm never doing great, honestly. I just thought I should give it a go. Yeah, so like 5 days, and like every day you speak to like a volunteer, whether they are training to be a counsellor or not, or therapist or not. You get time to speak to somebody about those feelings, because something that I've said for quite a long time is that, particularly on the NHS, you're not really allowed to talk about those kinds of feelings without a threat of being discharged from services or being locked up somewhere, basically. And I mean, if you've been here for long enough, you know that I have a history with those feelings and with attempts. I did this video, oh god, was that like 2 or 3 years ago nearly, of my 10-year anniversary since my last attempt. And quite soon after I left Maytree, I got this letter from them, which I wasn't expecting. It's dated the 6th of December. Yeah, I'll just read out what it says on the front page, because I just genuinely had no idea this was coming to me. Dear Artie, it was a pleasure to be able to share time with you during your stay at Maytree. I really hope that you enjoyed the shows you went to with your family after your time here. Yeah, that was something else I also made a video about. You struck me as an incredibly interesting person who really had a voice to share with the world. I couldn't help but think that your difficulties and hurdles you had faced within your life were giving meaning to what needs to change for society at large, and you had the intelligence to advocate, voice this and make a lasting difference. I found you to be very self-articulate and knew what was right for you, and within this I sense you had an ability to navigate yourself around the healthcare system. May you continue to have a strong sense of self and use your fiery passion to find and get the best support you need. May all the positive experiences you embodied at Maytree carry forward with you. I remember on the second day you excitingly shared with me your shopping trip to the charity shop and the book title that you came across. I'm sending you warm wishes, courage and strength for your journey ahead. All the best. And basically it's basically a letter of letters of different people who oh my god, different people who I spoke to whilst at Maytree, like the different volunteers. I thought I would have gotten in at least a couple before I started crying. And I only read the first page before I realised what this was, so I decided not to read the rest of them until a year later. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm going to read the letters from each of these different people, obviously not including anybody's names. Yeah, so the second one is, I'm really glad you saw out your stay and gained something from it. You struck me as a really lovely person and I wish you all the best. And then we had, Dear Artie, it was really good to meet you 3 times during your stay, and especially on the Sunday evening when we had a long chat over dinner in the front room. You're going through so much with your health, but I can see how determined you are to arm yourself with knowledge to maintain that form of control over all that's happening. I learned so much from you, so thank you, and I've come away very impressed by how much you know. It's great to hear you've got such a supportive community who understand and support each other. I hope you found your time at Maytree valuable and I wish you the absolute best. I did quite a lot of healthcare and ableism info dumping on people whilst I was there, because that's the other thing I feel like is missing in a lot of healthcare, and that's why my private therapist is very important and necessary for me, is that many healthcare practitioners are not prepared for a physically sick person or physically disabled person and the kinds of things that we deal with. That's why a lot of the time CBT, when done in a very blanket way, can actually be really damaging, and can just lead to self-gaslighting for a lot of sick, disabled, neurodivergent people, because that's just not how our lives work. We live in a very different reality to able-bodied, mentally ill people. And I mean, even my therapist was going to go back to a job in the NHS, like just part-time, and she faced horrific ableism. She told me the worst ableism she's ever come across in a work environment. And I think that's all you need to know about the NHS mental health services, to be honest. Dear Artie, I'm sitting here thinking about our time together during your stay at Maytree. It was a difficult moment during your stay, but what struck me most was the fact that you trusted me with how you're feeling at the time. Sharing can be difficult, so thank you for doing this. I appreciate how intense your thoughts were, but could also see how you were striving to get to a better place. You have great insight to how you tick, but I also recognise that sometimes you find it difficult to manage being around others. As I said, just a little different, but there's nothing wrong with being different. We're all unique, and that's what makes us interesting. It's a credit to you that despite your illness, the added stress of COVID in the background and domestic circumstances at home, you have proved yourself to be so willing to try and make new friends and attempt new challenges. I really hope that you thoroughly enjoy the time you spend in your theatre group. Even though it takes a bit of effort to go along, have fun being around folk who allow you to express yourself as you wish. I really hope also that you continue to benefit from the support you have in place and deserve. Can I thank you also for sharing your thoughts on neurodiversity? You definitely gave me many positive things to reflect on and to explore further. I realise that sometimes the combination of factors may sometimes leave you feeling exhausted, but I saw a strength in you that has enabled you to keep the plate spinning over time. I do hope that the conversations you had at Maytree proved helpful, and that opening up without fear of any judgment enabled you to see that you don't have to do this journey alone. Wishing you the best as you move on from your time at Maytree. This person... Basically, some of the stuff that happened at Maytree really sucked. That was also feedback I gave when I left, was a couple of staff members misgendered me, and there were issues with the person who was also there for the same reasons that I was there, and it was a really awful moment, and I'm trying to work out how to kind of explain some of what happened without saying too much, because for one, I don't think I'm allowed to say certain things, particularly not in a public space like a video that's going to go online. But also as well that I don't want anything to harm that other person who was in the space with me. Because, like, initially we got along really, really well. And I think the reason why what happened hurt so much is because that's something that I've been through a lot of times, that when you kind of take that moment to let somebody else in, befriend somebody else, particularly somebody else who's not well mentally, this is what happens when I bond with other mentally ill people. It feels like that it's a thing that I just experience with people generally, but I've just noticed it is a bit more obvious when it comes to people I bond with over mental health stuff. I've had this with other people in the past who have BPD, other people in the past who have eating disorders, other people who have combinations of those things, and other people who are struggling with whether they want to be here anymore. But generally, I find that most people I meet are not really at the same place as me when it comes to sort of self-analysis and like their progress with their well-being. And particularly as someone with BPD, I've always felt like there's a certain amount of responsibility that's been put on me that nobody else has to take on. That I have to always be in control and perfect and well-mannered when people are being horrible and nasty to me, or bigoted around me, or triggering me. But other people are allowed to be triggered and allowed to treat me in whatever way they feel like treating me. So I find it hard to open up to making new friends because of that. Or even going into community spaces because of that. I get this quite a lot in community spaces as well. That I often am not allowed the same grace that other people are allowed. So when this thing happened, it was just another repeat of when I guess it could be similar to the kind of example of twin flames in a way, that like you connect so immediately and suddenly with somebody, and you feel really comfortable, and you have the same kind of humour. Particularly in this place, we both called it the suicide house as like a joke to ourselves. And yeah, like one of these other messages said, the first one, that we went out so I could buy some CBD stuff to try and help me sleep, but also went to a couple of charity shops, and we had like a really good time. And I think it was literally that evening that it all kind of blew up. And like the reason why I don't you know, hate her or don't want her to be harmed in any way is because like she is like so many people I have met who are part of marginalised community groups, where they've kind of bought into a lot of the UK propaganda of other marginalised groups, and you can kind of see the conspiracy theorist stuff. Like I've seen it a lot online, but this was the first time I saw it in a person in front of me. And this is something that I struggle with, because like, yeah, there are a lot of just like really awful right-wing people out there, but then there's a lot of people who are really vulnerable, and the conspiracy theorist people and right-wingers really take advantage of them, basically. Because like I've seen a few people sharing their stories like this online, with like family members of theirs who were left-wing, but then something happened to their mental health and somehow they got sucked into things like QAnon. I can't remember his username, but I'll put it here, because I remember watching that quite a couple of years ago in like the height of pandemic and lockdown stuff. And he's now he's now realised he's autistic, so hi, same. But yeah, like it was all of these factors, the things she was saying, but also me seeing that she is clearly a very vulnerable person and not really knowing how to help. Because initially I was engaging in the conversation and trying to challenge her, and so were a couple of the other volunteers. But again, as an autistic, I struggle to keep up. My processing is slow, and a lot of these argument points are not based in logic, and like somehow the topic was shifting to things that I personally don't really know enough about to even really be able to challenge things any further. And I just got overwhelmed, and like I can't even really remember it, but I remember I started to kind of shut down, and cried, and was sort of like, I can't listen to you talking like this, because the things you're saying are horrible. So I left and went to the front room for a bit, and this was literally right before dinner as well. So I felt way too much adrenaline and way too sick to eat. I think I did eat eventually, but basically the point of me saying that is the person who wrote this last message was another autistic person. She's probably around my mum's age, who has a queer daughter around my age, and who's also autistic. And yeah, some of the things she said were a little bit too like, autism's a superpower for me, so I did sort of argue with some of those things that she said, but generally it was nice to be there with somebody else who kind of understood that sort of like social disconnect with things. And yeah, as well, after that numerous members of staff apologised to me that they managed to put me in a 5-day stay with somebody who was as bigoted as she turned out to be. But like that, they trust the people applying to be honest about their biases, and then that's unfortunately the issue, is that there are a lot of people who don't believe they have a bias. My answer when they asked me that was, I don't like right-wingers, so don't put me in there with one. It won't go well. And like, not that I think that she's a right-winger necessarily, but I do think that she was very vulnerable and had a lot of shit happen to her in her life that led to the possibility of being swept up in that. And it's really sad as well, because like I said, this has happened with me and a few other people I've made friends with and bonded over mental illness with, basically. It's not necessarily always been bigotry per se, but it's definitely kind of been something that's just been off. And it's usually linked to me being autistic a lot of the time and not reading, understanding or respecting a lot of the social rules. And like, I wanted to help her, and I kind of just had to keep saying to myself that hopefully I have. Hopefully the things that I said when I could say those things were enough to plant a seed that maybe she should look into other things. But she'd already kind of demonstrated that her research abilities were not great. She bought into the Matt Hancock, whatever it is, I'll put it on the screen. I can't even remember what the fucking thing was, but that conspiracy. Whereas I just kind of didn't really fully respond when she told me about that, because I just didn't have any idea what she was talking about. Looked it up later when I came home and was like, what the fuck? That's just a common drug used for end of life. Like, what? Yeah, anyway, this lady who sat with me and spoke to me whilst I was in the worst of that emotional response, she was also the one that rang me for like the follow-up. Yeah, and I think that's the other sad thing about Maytree, is that you talk to all these people who work there, and unless you volunteer, you never see them again. It did make me miss living in London though. It also said that Brighton needs one. Brighton needs a Maytree that's accessible, because we've got a lot of fucking mentally ill, disabled, queer trans people who I think really could benefit from something like Maytree existing. I'm so terrible with names as well that I don't even really fully remember who was who. It's just, it feels awful to, it feels awful, but also it's just part of my neurodivergence. Anyway, there's only 2 more left, so really went off on a tangent on that one. Dear Artie, it was a great pleasure to meet you at Maytree. Thank you for making us part of your journey to wellness. I'm so pleased you found your stay beneficial and found a new sense of hope, motivation and passion for the future. Top tip going forward, always pay attention in steam rooms. With best wishes for the future. I vaguely remember that story. Then, dear Artie, it was such a pleasure to welcome you to Maytree and share your first lunch with you. I hope the stay was all you hoped and needed. I was struck by what beautiful energy you brought in with you and hope you can see that light. I wish you well for all that lies ahead. I'm not someone who traditional and mainstream approaches to mental health works. Yeah, talking therapy is very useful. I think everybody would benefit from some talking therapy just to process things that goes on in your life without the fear of being judged for it. You know, like I'm never going to be the bullet journal girly as you saw from last year. We know I'm never going to be the clean girl aesthetic, which I have issues with that as it is anyway. You know, all of these romanticized standards of mental health and self-care are never something that's going to fit me. I grew up in the peak Tumblr era of 2008 or 9 to 2015 or so was sort of like that peak era of Tumblr for me, where bitches were romanticizing skins and men's wellness in like a bad sense. I was on all sorts of fucking weird websites and forums for eating disorders and mental illness and all that. Like, none of the typical recovery things really helped me. The things that helped me was making my recovery an act of spite, an act of political rebellion, even though I didn't know it originally when I first was trying to move past and through these sorts of feelings and impulses. And I would like to do a video and or a blog post more about that another time, because it's literally what I tell everybody. All of my friends who I know struggle with mental health or with their self-esteem and self-acceptance, I just say a bunch of political shit at them about why taking care of themselves is a political action, a political response as a group of marginalised people. And yeah, I've also finally come to the other end with finding some support for my BPD, because I've never actually had any proper support. I was diagnosed in 2018 and went to a group for a little bit, and then I had to move home. And then I got lost in the system, nobody gave a shit, and Health in Mind were like, we don't take you. We don't take you. If I can do it, then in the new year I will be starting a pretty hardcore 6-month steps course, which I would like to share with you here as well eventually. Again, not sharing details of the people, but yeah, I feel like if I do go to that, they are gonna have a hard time with me because I'm autistic and political. I think steps generally sounds useful for basically everybody these days, but there are a few things that, because it's mainly provided to people with BPD, that kind of makes BPD further stigmatized and further makes it a you problem rather than a everybody problem. Or like it's a society problem, my love. I am insane because of society, thank you. Me personally, if you would like me to make a video and or a blog post that politicizes or radicalizes the self-care you need, let me know in the comments. Drop something in the comments that you struggle with, and I can use that either as inspiration for the video, or I can respond to you in the moment so you at least have something to think about before the video comes out. Also, I do have a little journaling prompt digital zine on my coffee, specifically made for disabled, neurodivergent people. I think it's up for £5 if you're not a member, but if you are a member, you get it for free. So really, if you become a member, it's a better deal. Because members are only paid between, I think, like £1 and £2 a month. So just a quick self-plug there. But yeah, I think in general, when I went there, I had lost hope for humanity, basically. And seeing all the people who were volunteering there and speaking to them all, whether it was one-on-one or sort of just in the group in the kitchen, like really refilled that cup of hope and helped me be able to look for people like that and hope like that in more places. Like when it comes to the ceasefire, for example, our government's being fucking shit, but the fact that 76% of the UK public wants a ceasefire, that makes me hopeful. But it's a struggle, particularly when you are misunderstood regularly. But as well, this last year has been hell since my stay there, but it has also created a space for me to find some people who are really, really my people. And that gives me hope. That makes me feel better. That there is like a group of people who get me, and don't assume the worst of things I say. And I don't assume the worst of things they say. Like we actually equally have that grace for each other. And that feels nice. That is something that I feel like I've not really ever had. I just hope that's something that we can keep working towards generally. It's hard. Yeah, anyway, leave a like, don't forget to drop your comments down below. I will link details to do with Maytree in the description if it's something that you think you'll benefit from. They currently are only open, I think, in Islington, but they are making a Manchester one as well. So people more north will have easier access to something like this. And yeah, like I said, I hope that they will open one in Brighton, because I think a lot of fucking people need it. Even though I think we have something sort of similar called The Haven, but I don't know. Yeah, don't forget to watch my videos, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm like so close to this 1k mark. I would really just like to reach the 1k for this year, and then I'll be happy. And I can focus on the watch hours next year and not be so worried about the subscriber count. Yeah, and sharing my videos if you think you know somebody who would enjoy what I make really helps as well. And yeah, that's kind of it for today. I'll see you next week. Bye.